What if the only reason they ignore you is because you haven't shown them the danger in doing so? Shadows hold more power than the spotlight ever could, and those who are underestimated rewrite the rules while no one is watching. The moment they realize you can change how they feel, think, and choose, everything shifts. Comment awaken if you're ready to become the one they can't afford to overlook. A quiet light rises inside you before you decide whether to let it shine. Tension forms when the mind whispers that being fully seen might provoke unseen shadows. Influence does not grow by blinding others, but by allowing their eyes to adjust to your presence. The breath steadies as you sense how recognition alters the room even when you say nothing. How do you hold your brilliance without turning it into a threat? You notice how a subtle hesitation appears when your ideas land too cleanly in someone else's mind. The ego of power reacts like a mirror that cracks when another reflection becomes too sharp. Wisdom suggests that harmony emerges when your strength is framed as alignment rather than competition. A soft nod or a curious question keeps the air calm around rising potential. Can your mind endure being right without needing to be seen as right? There is a moment when admiration from you feels safer than admiration toward you. The heart tightens when pride in your capability is met with guarded smiles instead of shared celebration. The deeper truth is that identity built on hierarchy fears collapse when equality approaches too quickly. You breathe into the space between your worth and their comfort, protecting both. Who are you when you choose to influence without demanding acknowledgement? Every room has an invisible scale measuring who feels bigger and who feels safe. Stress rises when your presence tilts the balance before trust has time to form. Strategy becomes compassion when you make space for another's dignity to remain intact. You mirror respect first, letting their confidence settle like dust after a sudden movement. What power grows inside you when no one feels like they must shrink? Sometimes the most powerful move is letting the spotlight circle them while you guide from the quiet edges. Fear surfaces when you imagine your potential disappearing if it is not constantly displayed. Yet the paradox reveals itself: influence expands most when it doesn't need applause to exist. Your inner voice grows steady as you learn that shadows can also protect the flame. What becomes possible when your light chooses patience instead of proof? Attention rises the moment someone tries to read the future in your eyes. Urgency appears when the mind wants to declare its plans before they are fully formed. Power grows in silence because what is hidden cannot be countered. A calm breath reminds you that still waters are the hardest to predict. What if your next move only becomes visible after it is already inevitable? You notice how voicing desire too early makes your need louder than your value. Anxiety whispers that if others don't know your goal, you may never reach it. But mystery creates gravity, and gravity makes others lean closer without knowing why. You stay steady, letting curiosity do the work ambition cannot. When silence becomes intrigue, who is really chasing whom? In conversation, you offer stories about art, travel, or odd curiosities while your purpose stays beneath the surface. Pressure grows in them as they search for the missing motive that keeps you interesting. The mind loves puzzles more than it loves answers, and you become the unfinished page they can't stop rereading. You keep your inner horizon covered just enough to suggest there's more. How do you protect your future by revealing only what serves the present? There is strength in becoming unreadable in a world desperate to label everything instantly. Doubt rises in them when they can't place you into familiar categories, forcing respect where none was offered before. Your internal compass points inward, not outward, guiding decisions without broadcasting them. Intent becomes a private language spoken only inside your ribcage. What advantage emerges when others don't know which door you hold the key to? You walk away at the moment they expect a confession, leaving anticipation floating like a door left slightly open. Desire sharpens once denied, and attention intensifies when control isn't granted. Your path bends without noise, shaping outcomes before anyone notices direction has changed. Quiet determination becomes the blade that cuts without flashing steel. If no one can block what they cannot see, When will you finally enjoy the freedom of moving unseen? Stay mysterious, watch how the world follows. You notice how quickly attention sharpens when your presence reduces someone else's burden. Tension forms the moment you realize kindness without strategy often turns invisible. Value is not declared but demonstrated through problems you quietly remove from the room. Your breath deepens as you understand that power listens only to what benefits its own survival. Why expect recognition for what does not advance their world? When you offer solutions, eyes that once looked past you begin to focus. Unease appears when you sense they care less about you and more about what you make easier. Influence is not a favor they grant, but a consequence of what disappears when you are gone. The body relaxes as you witness how dependency grows from silent competence. If value is the currency, why would you ever pay with neediness? In every conversation, their priorities speak louder than their words. Friction rises when your desire demands attention that their goals refuse to give. You shift from asking to aligning, presenting your actions as architecture for their victories. A subtle echo inside you repeats, "Help their story," and they remember your name. How does power respond when your success is tied to theirs? Notice how ego wants to be seen as the savior, the visionary, the one who conquers obstacles. Pressure builds when praise threatens their throne, but relief appears when you hand them the crown. You let them believe they are the architect while you quietly draw the blueprint. Confidence returns as you discover leverage doesn't require credit, only necessity. What happens when they realize progress slows whenever you step away? There is a moment you stop hoping to be chosen and start becoming costly to lose. The mind steadies when you understand that emotional pleas drain, while strategic offers energize. Your contributions become the invisible engine behind their momentum, and engines are never ignored for long. Influence takes root the second they depend on your presence to maintain their status. Serve their interests now, watch how quickly they protect yours later. A room changes when you leave it at the exact moment attention peaks. Tension appears when they look for you and find only the echo of your presence. Scarcity turns you into a question mark that their mind keeps circling. A slow breath reminds you that distance can speak louder than performance. Why give them certainty when uncertainty keeps you alive in their imagination? You notice how constant availability flattens curiosity into routine. The heart tightens when you realize overexposure teaches others to stop noticing. Absence becomes a sculptor, carving value into the space where you used to stand. You step back just long enough for them to feel the temperature drop. What grows in the silence after your footsteps fade? There is power in timing your retreat so they feel like a missing piece instead of a disappearing act. Pressure builds in them when they reach for your attention and grasp only its outline. Awareness rises as your presence shifts from something assumed to something earned. You allow anticipation to mature into respect. When did wanting become the proof of needing? Picture yourself closing a doorway softly instead of slamming it behind you. They replay the last look you gave, the unfinished sentence, the slight smile that offered no explanation. Your absence becomes a storyline they must complete without you. Calm returns as you trust the open loop to do its work. What if attention is strongest when denied? You return only when the silence has sharpened their focus into longing. Their questions reveal how deeply they felt the gap you left behind. Influence grows when your reappearance feels like relief rather than routine. The body relaxes, knowing you are no longer chasing connection, it is chasing you. Who controls the room, the one who never leaves, or the one they hope will come back? A subtle warmth appears when someone sees their best qualities reflected in your eyes. Tension arrives as you notice how quickly approval becomes a silent expectation. The mind craves the comfort of familiarity because likeness feels like safety. You match their tempo, their humor, their rhythm without letting it consume your own. If belonging is a mirror, who decides which reflection becomes the truth? You observe how people soften when their worldview seems to echo from your presence. Doubt stirs when authenticity is tested against adaptability. Trust grows fastest when identity feels confirmed rather than challenged. A quiet breath reminds you that agreement does not require surrender. Where's the line between alignment and disappearance? In a conversation, you tilt your head the way they do, repeat a phrase with similar cadence, let your smile land a second after theirs. Unease flickers as you notice the power hidden inside comfort. Rapport is a doorway only similarity can unlock, but once inside, influence chooses the furniture. You maintain awareness of the posture your spirit holds. Are you reflecting their light or dimming your own? When conflict takes shape, you become the calm reflection that shows them who they prefer to be. Anxiety fades in them when your steadiness makes their volatility feel unnecessary. You understand that validation can redirect even the sharpest ego without force. The body relaxes as you hold a state they unconsciously rise to match. How much control exists in simply refusing to mirror their chaos? Slowly, they begin to crave the version of themselves that appears in your presence. A quiet fear surfaces. If you leave, does that version leave with you? Influence deepens when they associate you with the identity they admire most. You breathe steadily, knowing the bond now grows from who they become beside you. What could be more irresistible than the person they believe they are when you stand near? If this is hitting close to home, take a second, like the video, subscribe, and stay with me. There is a certain stillness in your posture when you know something others want to understand. Tension rises when curiosity pulls them closer, trying to decode what stays behind your calm expression. Power accumulates in the gap between what you know and what they wish you would reveal. You breathe softly, deciding which truths strengthen the moment and which dissolve advantage. Why give away leverage that arrived in your hands for a reason? You notice how important people listen differently when the information affects outcomes. Stress appears in them when their decisions rely on what only you can provide. You become a quiet axis holding the weight of future moves. A silent reminder echoes inside. Influence is measured by the consequences of your silence. What happens when the next step is impossible without your voice? Every secret has a pulse, and timing determines whether it heals or harms. Pressure builds when you learn that sharing too much too soon replaces gratitude with dependency decay. You guard your sources like fragile bridges that collapse if too many walk across. Calm returns as you recognize that trust grows when discretion does not falter. If they can reach the river without you, why would they honor the one who led them there? A whispered insight can shift alliances faster than loud proclamations. Unease sparks when they realize the map is incomplete without your hand pointing the direction. You become a co-author of their victories, the invisible architect of better decisions. You keep your words few but weighted. Who holds the crown, the ruler or the one who warns the ruler of storms? Information is a blade, and the one who sharpens it decides when it cuts. The body steadies as you accept that being needed is a stronger bond than being liked. You remain observant, releasing only the truths that reinforce your place in their story. Value multiplies when absence creates uncertainty and presence delivers clarity. When your silence can change the outcome, how loudly does your existence speak? A subtle spark ignites when you recognize a frustration they've been carrying alone. Tension forms as the mind feels the sudden relief of being understood without confession. Shared struggle is a doorway that unlocks loyalty faster than shared joy. Your presence becomes a shield standing beside their silent battles. What binds two people more tightly than the dragon they both fear? You notice how complaints reveal more truth than compliments ever will. Anxiety fades in them when you validate the threat they've been minimizing to survive. When you name their enemy, you give shape to the thing stealing their peace. A calm breath reminds you that alliance is built not on greetings but on defenses. Who do they trust more, the one who applauds them or the one who guards them? In small moments, you lean just close enough to signal, I see the struggle you hide. Pressure shifts toward a quiet relief as the weight they carry becomes shared instead of concealed. You step into the trench, not the balcony, choosing empathy over performance. Echoes of solidarity turn strangers into confidants. When survival is the goal, do allies replace friends? The body remembers every time someone stood beside it when fear tried to isolate. Doubt disappears when you help them fight the force that once made them feel alone. You become a silent partner in the war behind their calm face. Their heartbeat slows because you are there, not watching but defending. What if loyalty is simply the memory of who showed up? Eventually, they look at you not as company but as necessary protection. A quiet shift happens when they realize the world feels sharper without you nearby. Influence grows strongest when tied to safety rather than admiration. You breathe with certainty, knowing alliance has replaced option. Stand with the battles they can't name, and watch them choose you before everyone else. There is a quiet elegance in letting someone believe the story that keeps their world intact. Tension appears when you feel the urge to correct illusions that grant them confidence. Power is rarely about truth but about the narrative that maintains momentum. You breathe and let their myth breathe with you. What happens when you become the keeper of the dream that keeps them strong? You see how identity expands when someone feels admired for who they hope to become. Unease flickers when you realize challenging that identity shrinks your influence. Alignment becomes a soft art, supporting the hero, not stealing the stage. A gentle nod anchors the fiction without exposing the cracks. Are you reinforcing their delusion or guiding their evolution? In a conversation, notice how their shoulders rise slightly when they play the visionary. Tension loosens when you amplify their ideas rather than competing with them. You help shape the fantasy into something useful, and usefulness becomes loyalty. A quiet echo within reminds you that belief is the ultimate fuel. How far can a dream travel if you become the one who carries it? Micro practice. Watch how they describe themselves when they speak of the future, and mirror the version they are trying to grow into. Pressure dissolves in them when they feel seen not for what they are but for who they want to be. You become the reflection that keeps possibility alive. The body relaxes as you turn ego into partnership. What influence lives inside the vision they think only you understand? Eventually, they cling not to you, but to who they are around you. A subtle fear rises in them. If you disappear, does the prophecy collapse? You hold the myth not as manipulation but as architecture for their courage. Breath steadies as you choose to support the becoming instead of underlining the flaws. If your presence protects their future, how easily could they ever let you go? You watch the way their hands fidget when stress tightens the room. Tension thickens the air as emotions spill faster than logic can catch them. Your calm becomes a counterweight, transforming chaos into something manageable. A steady breath creates an anchor they didn't know they needed. When the storm rises inside them, who are you becoming if you stand unshaken? Anger flares in their voice, searching for someone to burn alongside them. Anxiety urges you to respond with the same fire just to feel protected. But alchemy means turning fire into gold, not adding wood to the blaze. You become the cool stone in their palm that refuses to heat up. What shifts when rage meets a surface that does not reflect it? Fear makes their thoughts rush like water looking for an escape. Pressure inside you says to panic too, just to stay synchronized with the room. Yet you slow down, letting your silence absorb what their mind cannot hold alone. Your steadiness teaches them what their nervous system forgot. How powerful is the person who becomes the pause in someone else's spiral? Workplaces, relationships, crowded streets, these are the battlefields where cortisol chooses the victor. Stress becomes the unseen enemy that steals presence before anyone notices the theft. Your role is to unarm stress itself, turning urgency into clarity. A quiet voice inside says, handle the moment, and the future handles itself. Who protects power when power feels afraid? Eventually, they seek you not for answers but for the feeling that life becomes solvable in your presence. Loyalty grows from the relief they experience when your calm rewrites the atmosphere. You are no longer just a person but an emotional sanctuary they cannot replace. The breath moves easier because you exist. When fear looks into your eyes and calms down, whose authority does the room obey? You feel the quiet tension of environments that expect only one version of you. Resistance rises when the world asks you to be predictable enough to control. Adaptability becomes the art of taking whatever shape keeps influence alive. Your breath softens as you shift without apology. Who can strike what refuses to hold a fixed form? You notice the urge to prove yourself through consistency even when the situation has already changed. Doubt appears when flexibility threatens the identity you've worked to define. Survival in power dynamics requires evolution, not repetition. You adjust the angle of your presence like water finding its path. If identity becomes a cage, who benefits when you lock the door? In a conversation, you move from listener to strategist to ally while they're still deciding what they need. Anxiety surfaces for a moment as you expand beyond the single role they expected. Influence flows through the ability to belong everywhere without clinging anywhere. A quiet echo reminds you that usefulness is a moving target. What is loyalty if not fitting seamlessly into the moment that matters? Your posture changes with the environment, showing respect without surrender. Tension loosens in them when they feel you understand the rhythm better than they do. You hold form only long enough to gain trust, then morph to meet the next demand. Presence becomes a shapeshifter that stays one step ahead of expectation. What enemy can map a force that never stands still? Eventually, they stop trying to categorize you because the category keeps changing. Relief and fear mix as they realize you thrive where others collapse. You become the solution that adapts faster than the problem grows. Breath remains steady because flexibility is your armor. If you can always become what the moment needs, what future could ever deny you? In every room you enter, connection shifts the moment your presence starts to shape how others feel. Influence is not loud, it is felt, and you now know exactly how to make them feel the difference. Subscribe so your growth never again depends on staying invisible. What becomes possible when you finally choose the version of you that others cannot ignore? Your power is already awake. Now it's time to use it with intention, subtlety, and calm control. Comment awaken so I know you're stepping into the circle of those who no longer wait for permission. The next video will show you how to control perception itself so opportunities move toward you. Are you ready to let the world adapt to you instead of the other way around?